when they went to the Queen to tell her her subjects had no bread. Do you know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
Here, take the bomb.
We're getting screwed, man. Every time we turn around, we're getting screwed. Oh, the revolution's going to be through podcasting for sure. That's the only way we talk. It's the little guys that take the brunt of everything. It's got to stop. Peasants, man. We're just peasants. Every one of us. You watch those old movies, you see the peasants in the background with the kings and queens walking around. We're those people. We're those people. Good morning, peasants. Welcome to another episode of The Peasant's Perspective. We know we have some audio problems, so we're working. We're going to try out a couple new settings and see where we end up. Good morning, Pony Boy. You're quick on the draw. Welcome, everybody. I figured we'd start a new little tradition now when we start the show. You know, buy ourselves an extra 60 seconds or so. We're going to quote the price of Bitcoin.
Oh,
Bitcoin today is trading at $104,250, which is an incredible gain from its start back at
well, when it started at zero.
yeah. But in the last year, we went from 88,000. We're at 104. That's pretty good, bro. It's pretty good.
20-some%.
See what silver's doing? $51. When I graduated high school, somewhere around like June of 2002, it was $487.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I remember when it was $3.
10 times plus. That means if I would have made $1 million, if I'd had $1 million windfall, oh my gosh, you became a millionaire right when I got out of high school.
Yeah.
To have the same buying power, I have to make $10 million today. That's only 20 years, man.
Oh, man.
22 years, 23 years. Like, that's...
It tells you a little bit about how much you need to pile up for retirement, which is like...
You know what? I could have just piled up the silver.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Bitcoin's, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't even want to look at Bitcoin. Look at this. Bitcoin to the dollar, to the silver here. Look at that.
Oh, dang.
Jeez. It's bad. Look at this. Bitcoin to the US dollar, silver to the US dollar. Still 1,000% up. Look at this. This is insanity. But anyways, if anybody's interested in living on a silver standard, I highly recommend going to Liberty Dollar Financial Association, libertydollar.nl. It's kind of
we don't have any connection to them, do we?
Huh?
We're not connected to them, right?
We're not. This is where I'm at. If you want to get an account there, it's libertydollar.nl login/peasant, I think is there's like a referral program. Anyways, very cool. But that's the price of Bitcoin today. And that's the price of silver. So highly recommend you get in. That's crazy. 20% up this year. Man, unbelievable. So at the end of the show today, we're going to get to a bunch of financial stuff. Bitcoin's in the future. As of yesterday, I mean, we've known that the United States was going to digital currency and stuff like that. It's here. It's upon us. So anyways, we'll be talking about that. Donald Trump has got to be the funniest president on the planet. So if you can see my little post here, this is my post. I was dying laughing when I read this. So let me read this for you. Many in the fake news media have claimed that we will begin denying visas to overweight people. They have even come up with a term for these people, high-calorie human. This is totally false, all caps. We will not ban all fat people from entering our great country. Only those whose poor health will overburden our healthcare system. Visa applicants who are only slightly overweight have nothing to worry about. The bigger ones will need to trim down to get approved. We will expand this rule to cover expats in the near future. Rosie, you will never return to this great country. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
What the heck?
So that's why I posted the GIF. When I read that, I started dying. I was like, no, just do it. Oh my gosh.
It's funny, but rude.
The birds between Donald Trump and Rosie O'Donnell are hilarious. She rolls off his back, but she fled to Ireland, bro.
I know. She's like a little angry midget Karen.
Looking rough. Now, Donald Trump did address that presidents really shouldn't be sarcastic.
Probably not.
Oh, I got to change my audio.
Uh-oh.
Not AI. I know some of you were suspecting we were AI this morning because of our totally. All right, let's get this switched over here. Here we go. Okay, so Donald Trump talked about presidents really shouldn't be sarcastic.
And I didn't want to sacrifice a great ballroom for an okay ballroom by leaving it right smack in the middle.
In October, you were asked about ending wars, and you talked about that, and you said, I don't think there's anything that's going to get me into heaven. I think I'm not maybe heaven bound. A lot of Christians were sort of sad to hear that because Christ came to forgive our sins if we believe that as Christians, and they open heaven to all of us. So don't you believe that?
So the other day, the New York Times did a story and took that statement totally literally. When I made that statement, I was being funny, sarcastic. You know, it's bad for a politician to be sarcastic. I said, I'm never going to make it to heaven. The big audience. I don't think I can make it. I don't think I qualify, you know, etc. I was kidding. I was having fun. I don't know if I will or not. I don't know. But the Times did a story, a little guy named Peter Baker. Peter Baker, who is the sycophant to Obama. You know, he wrote the Obama book. Like Obama was a good president. He was one of the worst. Biden was the worst. Obama was top 3 or 4. But think of this. I make this statement, and the Times has a front pager. Donald Trump is now questioning his life and his this and his that. I said to a group of people, a large group, I said, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm not so sure, but I'm going to fight to me, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I was having fun, and they made it like serious. The thing I thought I learned, but I forgot about it, I guess, when I made this little, is you can't be sarcastic as a politician or have fun. But I don't regret it. I don't regret it.
Burns like 3 people in this thing. Oh, Biden was the worst. Obama top 3 or 4. But who was 2 and 3? Is it like Herbert Hoover? Like, who are the other candidates? Van Buren? Like, how far back are we stretching? Carlitos, what's up? Good morning. Ponyboy said earlier, opened app because it's past 8:30. I figured it was late. I had just started. Yeah, Ron got here with a solid 120 seconds to spare. You know, he's got a 3-minute commute from his bed to his desk. Shantini, good morning. Carlitos, what's up? He is hilarious. Carlitos, check out on the chemtrails. Tucker Carlson just did a big episode on chemtrails. Apparently, they're doing it to us bad.
Yeah.
Got an expert on there. Ponyboy also said he's hilarious, referring to Trump. I've seen so many comments here lately of people saying I think he's a horrible person, but he is hilarious.
Yeah.
He is absolutely hilarious. Speaking of things that are not so hilarious, let's jump back over to this J6 pipe bomb story.
Oh,
the
boy.
biggest thing about this is this story came out, Friday night?
Yep.
The FBI and the DOJ have not responded to it up till now. Donald Trump got briefed on it on Sunday. The non-response is damning.
It's shameful.
It's not just shameful. It's it.
Oh, yeah.
They make, I mean, Charlie Kirk's assassinated. We've arrested the shooter. Oh, it wasn't the shooter. You know, I mean, these guys are not afraid to make an announcement. They're not afraid to take credit for something. Why are they silent?
Mm-hmm.
And here's the reason. It's because it's a cover-up. FBI was at her door asking permission to knock, and they pulled them off. That's why. The whole thing from start to finish is a cover-up. So if there's any agents that have been involved the whole time, expect it. This, I mean, would you? This is not human nature. We're at the point where we need whistleblowers, and that's it. Okay. So the former chief of police, Stephen Sund, who was, I'm a little confused. There was an interim chief of police on January 6th named Yogananda Pittman. We're going to talk about her in a second. But he was the chief of police on January 2nd as well. So I'm not exactly, I don't know if I'm not 100% positive. There's a very clear explanation of how these two were chief on the same day, but either way. So he got onto Newsmax because he's picked up on the story. Now, keep in mind, Chief of Police Sund testified to the J6 committee. They wouldn't release his transcript. He's the one who's been saying, listen, the Capitol got attacked. We had all kinds of intel coming in. National Guard got denied. Pipe bombs, you know, he's
the bad look for the Democrats.
He's yes, he's bad look for the Democrats, but he's positioning in himself in a position on, we got to get to the bottom of this. My cops got attacked. So I don't care if it was MAGA or Antifa or whoever, who did it.
Nearly 5 years ago, January 5, 2021, a hooded character planted bombs outside the DNC and RNC headquarters in Washington, D.C. The Despite the most elaborate investigation in history into January 6th, which was the next day, somehow, despite a $500,000 FBI reward, the Kabuki Theater manhunt for the pipe bomber went years unsolved. But that might be changing. Investigative journalist Steve Baker with Blaze Media claims a forensic analysis of a female former U.S. Capitol Police officer's gait is a 94 to 98% match of the unique stride of the long-sawed J6 pipe bomb suspect, adding that this finding was confirmed by several high-level intelligence sources. A woman, a female Capitol Police officer. Baker says that female cop left the department in mid-2021, so just a few months later, for a security detail at the CIA. At this hour, no government agency has confirmed or denied this reporting. The FBI just telling us the investigation continues, not even touching our actual question about the specific officer. CIA called us back a number of times and said they appreciated us reaching out, claimed they'd provide us with a statement. We have not gotten that yet. Capitol Police have not responded to us yet at all. Their former chief, though, is with us tonight. Stephen Sund was the Capitol Police chief on January 6, 2021, and it's good to have you on, sir. We're not naming this officer. We're not going to show her picture at this point. I want to start, though, with, do you believe that that is the person responsible for putting those two bombs down?
Again, Rob, thank you very much for having me on. Sure. And I am very well aware of Steve Baker's report. I've read it. Steve Baker, Joe Henneman put a lot of work into it. Again, I'm somebody that kind of works from facts, and that's kind of the way I've always been since January 6th, trying to put that out there. I would sure like to hear a statement, an official statement from one of the officials, either at FBI or DOJ. And I can tell you right now, nobody knows the impact that had on my safety and security on January 6th more than me. I know the resources I had to send to that. I know the impact it had to our overall security, and no one wants to see the pipe bomber identified more than I do. I'm just surprised that here we are 58 months later, and we still haven't gotten an official, some type of official acknowledgement or a suspect. You know, Kash Patel's been in place over there for 8 of those 58 months.
Yeah.
They've got great technology. They've got great resources and great investigators. I certainly think they'd be able to solve this case.
So you don't want to say whether or not you believe. I mean, we're not going to put her name and her identity on television, but it's out there now. And did you know that woman?
Yeah, I did know the officer, but I think, you know, as the former chief up there, without some supporting facts other than reading one person report,
I got to say, I've always thought this was a guy, and I've heard people say it might be a woman. I'm watching this as she's coming around the corner right now. You know, one of the big ways you can tell the difference between a man and a woman by the way they walk is it's not necessarily gait or anything. It's the turn of the arms. Men's arms, their palms face backwards because of broad shoulders, and women's arms, their palms face inward. And men that are effeminate, when you kind of look at a man, nothing to do with homosexuality, but you kind of have this feminine look, you'll notice that it's oftentimes the arms that tip you off. You kind of go, why does that guy look effeminate? Why is he walking that way? Look at palms.
Well, I just felt like a genius because the very first seconds I saw the first video, I was like, it's a woman. You know, it was just, I was just going with my gut, and my gut was saying it was a woman.
Well, I'm looking at it now, and yeah, she's walking with palms turned inward, so it is. I've got something else to admit before we jump back and finish this video. So we've got listeners, and, you know, some of my family tunes in, and they use different band names, and I feel like a complete piece of garbage right now.
Okay.
Yesterday, Mata Easel put on there, it's my birthday.
Yeah.
And I thought, who's Mata Easel? And I thought, is that my sister? I'm not exactly sure who it is. I'm not sure.
I think it's not your mom. It's
my mom. Yesterday was my mom's birthday. She gets on my podcast telling me, and I didn't call her. So, Mom, you'll be getting a call from me later today. I apologize. I'm bad at stuff like that. All right, back to Stephen's son.
I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to take one side or another. I'd like to hear more information. I'd like to get more facts. I think the American people want to hear more facts and want to get a definitive answer, not. You know, it's interesting. Gait analysis has been around. They used it to identify Osama bin Laden. The FBI has that capability. You know, why are we hearing this from a reporter? I want to hear some facts. So, you know, until I can get some facts, I really don't, want to prejudge.
Do you think it's being leaked out from inside? I guess inside the Trump DOJ. Like, how do you think Baker got it? The reporter.
I really don't know. I think from what I understand, he brought in his own resources, his own capabilities to do the analysis. So I'm not getting the impression it got leaked out of the DOJ. But I would think the DOJ has significant information on who we may have as suspects.
Yeah, I would think so too. So we'll leave it there. We don't know, but it's obviously it's a captivating report, I would say. if this turns out to be the case, let's just imagine for a second that this is in fact who the bomber was. What does that mean about the truth and the reality of January 6th in your mind?
So let me say this, rather than answering hypotheticals. I've always said that whoever turns out to be the pipe bomber, regardless of this person or another, is going to put some puzzle pieces into place that I think are going to be critical, because I think this person is going to lead to other people that may be, some of the masterminds behind this whole thing, what happened. Because as the chief, I was faced with depleted intelligence. The intelligence wasn't complete. It would have been nice to have complete. I denied resources in advance, denied resources only up until 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes, 3 minutes before they broke the first one to the Capitol. So there's a lot of questions I've always had, but I think that the identifying identity of the pipe bomber is going to be a huge puzzle piece for this.
Do you think, and I don't have much time left, but do you think that is there a scandal here in the people that they can't identify, or the people that didn't get charged in January 6th, people that we know were instigators that weren't charged, the fact that there's no identification of this person when obviously we have the technology to identify them? Do you feel that there's more to this that's being hidden from the American people?
Well, just the fact that we can't get answers gives that impression. So, yeah, I do think there's more answers to get, and I do think there's more to this than we really know right now.
Everybody's reporting the same story.
Dollars Vote Louder says, yeah, Pony Boy, you're grounded, Taylor. Yeah. I feel really bad. And it takes a lot to make me feel bad, by the way. I've pretty much gotten to the point to be shame-free. Okay, so I feel really bad. DollarsVoteLouder.com says, President Trump, oh, by the way, amazing name. That must be Robert McPeasant. President Trump had to bring his own resources to investigate. What was he supposed to do? Trust the FBI or corrupt Capitol Police? Oh, LOL, CCP to expose themselves. Yeah, no kidding, right? Now, here's the thing. You always ask the old Latin question, que bono, who benefits? So you're an investigative body. You want financing. You want terrorism capacity. You want to tap into those NSA powers. You want to increase your ability to spy on politicians. So you stage a riot. Mm-hmm. If it's started up by MAGA, you get to spy on MAGA. If it's started by Antifa, you get to spy on Antifa. And in the end, you end up spying on everybody. So who benefits here? This is the prisoner's dilemma. I'm in prison. One guard is guarding 120 inmates. How does this make any sense? Why do you have one guard guarding 120 inmates? You know how they do it? They keep the prison population divided. That's why the prisons are segregated. Yes, it's enforced by inmates, but it's encouraged by the system. Why? Because if inmates are fighting each other over ramen and bunk space and who gets the best cell with the view of the clock out in the hallway, right? They're not going to fight the guards.
Right.
So here we are. It's MAGA who started the riot. No, now we're pardoned, and it's Antifa who started the riot. That's the narrative. But really, who started the riot?
Well, even better, just have a fight about it and never find out.
But the investigators get all the power and authority. Now, out in Berkeley last night, there was a little bit of a riot.
So I just got to the Charlie Kirk event, and there's literally so many unhinged people here already. Like, look at this. This is the shit liberals do.
And basically what I'm showing you here is there was another one of these violent riots in Berkeley last night. Now you might think, well, why did he jump from January 6th to Berkeley where there's a riot? Well, here's why. Yogananda Pittman, this woman right here, she was the interim head of the Capitol Police on January 6th. Now, I don't understand why she was an interim head, relationship with Stephen's son. This has been explained by people, but whatever. The U.S. Capitol Police Labor Committee, so after she was the interim head on January 6th, the U.S. Capitol Police Labor Committee voted 92% against Pittman in a vote of no confidence in her leadership, which should have been the end of her career. But nope, less than a month later, she was transferred to Berkeley and named their chief of police, which is in Pelosi's backyard, in a very cushy position. Coincidence? Absolutely laughable. So last night in Berkeley, guess who the police chief was in charge of the riot in Berkeley, Nancy Pelosi's hometown.
Well, she did such a good job on January 6th.
Who took orders from Nancy Pelosi on January 6th. And if the Capitol Police did allegedly plant that pipe bomb, you got a lot of connections and a lot of dots to explain. There are no, what do they say? There's no coincidences. or there's no conspiracies, but there's no coincidences. I think that's a Steve Bannon quote, right? This is another one of those things where you're like, come on, man. And you've got the guy in charge of the Michigan kidnapping plot that gets transferred over to DC right in time to plan January 6th. Oh, the January 6th budget was included in the CARES Act. Did you know that? Did you know that our cells were all prepaid by the CARES Act, signed into law by the president?
I did know that, and I think that you should spend a couple of minutes on that, because if you gloss over that, it's going to get forgotten.
When I got to prison, right, we are under the impression this is like a Biden admin thing. Somehow they got the ball rolling and got us arrested instantaneously, just instantaneously. That's not what happened. What happened was in the summer of 2020, there was a large bill passed called the CARES Act. Thomas Massey, bless his heart, and I say that in the most Midwestern sense, bless his heart, got up and forced a vote on the CARES Act because he said we can't spend $1 trillion without on proxy voting, right? Well, in that bill, big bill, was included funding to amp up the prison in DC for January 6th, as in they prepaid to paint the blocks and set the space aside and have it pre-rented so it wouldn't be full when we got there.
Huh.
Already empty blocks.
How would they know that they needed to plan for that?
It's almost like the people who were planning for January 6th might have written the bill. Hey, I wrote a post this weekend too. It says, I understand travel delays. Like, I totally sympathize. I mean, I get that Americans were delayed in their travel by Capitol Hill, right? You couldn't get on the plane. You got long waits. I remember my 8-hour waits just to get Homeland Security to clear my name. I remember missing a flight, going to trial, thinking I might miss a trial, have a bench warrant out for me by the time I wake up in the morning, right? I remember this stuff. I blame it on a Capitol Hill police officer that planted the pipe bomb. Who at Capitol Hill do you blame eating your right to travel? Do you blame the Republicans or the Democrats, right? But Capitol Hill seems to be the source of quite a few of our issues here. Pretty crazy. Now, let's talk about the election, because we got something very interesting going on, right? Now, we know how the election went down. Let's talk about Wisconsin in 2020. This right here is going to describe exactly how they stole the election in 2020. This is Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen Polling. This is Rasmussen Reports, and this is founder of Election Watch, Peter Berninger. And there's an email right here that in Wisconsin, Claire, this woman here, you have a flair for drama, okay? They stopped the counting of the votes. This woman, Claire, brought in some ballots. You have a flair for drama, delivering just the margin needed at 3 a.m. I bet you had those votes counted at midnight and just kept the world waiting. Excuse me? All right, let's see how this goes.
I mean, the point is that she walks out at 3 a.m. and then less than an hour later, she gets congratulated for delivering just the margin needed at 3 a.m.
Between 10:30 and 11 p.m. on November 3rd, 2020, in the city of Milwaukee, Claire Woodall-Vaughn, the election clerk at the time, sent the observers home. And she told them all the ballots had been counted. They stopped counting. Right around 11 p.m. Central Standard Time, she sent the observers home. There's some problems with that. She wasn't done counting. At 1:15 a.m., a Dwayne Johnson, not the actor, he brought ballots in at 1:15 a.m. to the city of Milwaukee. Remember, everybody's gone except a few election people left remaining. At 1:30 a.m., they started firing up the tabulators again, feeding ballots through. Well, first off, you can't do it without the observers there. Second off, you can't bring in ballots after midnight. The only exception is if somebody's in line waiting and it goes past midnight by chance, they still get to vote. So then she stopped counting. So we got three things right there. And then at 1:30, she fired up the tabulators and started feeding the ballots through again. And at 2:30, we had a God bless her, Maria Sanchez, who filled out a sworn affidavit. She punched the clock there. She was working. And she looked back and they were still feeding ballots into the tabulators. And she was already signed up for that third shift and she went home. And we have another one, retired Army Colonel David Bolter filled out an affidavit. He was there yet around 1:30 a.m. in the morning, November 4th. And he saw that ballots were brought in, big bags of ballots, and they started to feed them into the tabulators. The whistleblower told us Claire picked names and addresses off of the WisVote statewide voter database that she could see who
She walks out at 3 a.m.
people are voting. Find them to
Okay.
So these are real people to feed them into the tabulators.
All right, this is important. This next part is important because you're going to see the tables have turned. Okay. If you think your elections are secure, listen to your enemy. Listen to your enemy.
Okay.
Before Donald Trump, you had people like Amy Klobuchar, get rid of the machines. Kamala Harris, get rid of the machines, right? All of a sudden, Trump's in power. They don't want to get rid of the machines. In fact, they fight them.
Whistleblower told us Claire picked names and addresses off of the WisVote statewide voter database that she could see who had not cast a ballot. So these are real people. Everybody always wants, oh, dead people are voting. No. Or fake people are voting. No. They're using real people. They can see who had not yet cast a ballot. They picked those names and addresses off, assigned them to a ballot, and cast a ballot for those people. That's how they stole the presidential election. Now, that's exactly where this email ties in. At 3:06 a.m., I have a videotape by TMJ News out of Milwaukee. They were filming her, and that's a little suspicious to start with. Why were they there at 3 o'clock in the morning to film Claire walking out of Central Count with the USB sticks with the absentee vote totals on? But remember, she kicked the observers out, the last one, around 11 p.m. and stopped counting 11 p.m. on November 3rd. Why is she staying in there for, 4 hours? And a few other people like Neil Albrecht. He was the former clerk before her, but he was in there too. And Jonathan Zenga, a deputy clerk. And Badi Chang, a deputy clerk. Why were they in there yet feeding ballots in when the observers were gone and she already told people they counted all the ballots? That alone shows you that there's election fraud in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. We need some jail time.
They're using real people. They're using the machines.
Mm-hmm.
It's all ties in together, right? Now, unfortunately, the tab I needed to play you closed. So I'm looking for it real quick because it's very important. We're not moving on until I play it.
Well, what would be really cool is if they could find out who those people were and then go find them all and do a little audit. That would be so great.
They did.
Oh,
they did. Yeah, they found them in nursing homes with dementia. They found them, right? They found the people that never vote.
Aha.
And why do they never vote? Because they can't read. Because they can't talk.
Oh.
Nursing homes, mental care facilities. This was a huge scandal. Now, tables have turned, right? Because here's how it works. You can make the vote anything you want. So game day, people come vote in person, send in your ballot, do whatever. They'll tally it up. But then the machines tell them how much they need, and they run an algorithm. If you don't have to cheat, don't cheat, right? If you can win on game day, win on game day. But when you can't win on game day, just extend the voting. You're going to need ballots because you're going to get audited, but the machine will give you what you need, but now you can backfeed. The machine's going to tell you, hey, you need to get this percentage of ballots. And this is where we get reports of ballots that are unfolded, that are pre-printed with the bubble spill printed in, with identical signatures to the tune of dozens or 100 of them, as in somebody's just sitting there signing ballot after ballot. But never fear, because the Democrats are on it. They don't want this to repeat itself, because now that Trump's in charge, he might do it. So, hey, we have an ally. It's an unsuspected one. You know who Mark Elias is? You know, the guy who challenges everything from Donald Trump, and the former attorney from Perkins Coie with the Russiagate. And you know who Jasmine Crockett is, right?
We do know that one of his friends has purchased Dominion. So it's going to be really important for us to educate all states that we can to make sure that their Secretary of States are like, we don't want the Dominion machines. Because I personally believe that ally purchased Dominion so that he could potentially play with the machines, because we know that they're trying to cheat by changing the lines for the midterms. And I think that they're trying to solidify their cheat potentially with the voting machines.
Oh, how's that even possible?
Is she a terrorist? Is she a January 6er? What's going on here? Did you hear that? She's talking to Mark Elias. Look at Mark Elias's face. They know exactly what's going on. Yes, this is a problem. The conservatives, Con Inc., the neocons, bought the machines. When Amy Klobuchar was concerned about it, probably for legitimate reasons. When Kamala Harris was concerned about it, probably for legitimate reasons, right? A whole slew of people. Jimmy Carter's like, hey, these mail-in ballots are a problem. Let's marry these two systems up. If you can get the algorithm, you can backload the ballots, because the Democrats are good at ballot harvesting. Hey, where'd you get that batch of ballots? Oh, I just came from an apartment complex that just happens to vote 97% Democrat. You know what I mean? Oh, really? Did you? Unbelievable. See with your own eyes. See with your own eyes, right? There it is. There's your leading, how many people have said Jasmine Crockett might be the new leader of the Democrat Party? Now, I know she's in the running. She's saying get rid of the machines because the Republicans will cheat. So are you just conceding the premise that these machines aren't secure? Because I think that's the debate. You got one side saying, no, the machines are fine. They're just tabulators. They're secure. They're not even connected to the internet.
They're buying the machines.
You're like, dump them because we don't own them anymore. Now, election interference isn't just mail-in ballots. It isn't just election workers sending people home while they bring in ballots after midnight. It's not just that. It extends to the media. So the BBC is going through a massive scandal right now because apparently 4 years later, people are realizing, I think they edited that footage. I knew they edited that footage on the afternoon of January 6th.
And they're not even in our country.
Huh?
They're not even in our country.
So they fired their CEO, and I guess a couple other people have been walked out the door. And Donald Trump said, I need an apology or you're getting $1 billion suit. Well, Nigel Farage was asked about this.
First of all, you've criticised Labour's workers' rights policies and commented to potentially undoing some of them. You said you might want to cut minimum wage for younger people. What is your message to workers today? Are you the anti-worker party? And if I may, on the BBC, what do you make of President Trump weighing into the conversation about the BBC and the British media landscape? Do you welcome that, or does that concern you?
Well, if I was the president of the United States of America, if I was the person making sure that the United Kingdom had security guarantees that meant that it could be defended, whereas on its own it would be helpless, and I'd been stitched up on the eve of a national election. I mean, people talk about election interference. What the BBC did was election interference. If you put yourself in Donald Trump's shoes, I think you'll understand why, when I had a chat with him on Friday, he made his feelings on the subject known to me in no uncertain terms and not in a quotable form. Even your question is the question. Even your question is the problem. There are only 8,000 big businesses in the whole of the United Kingdom. Only 8,000. 99% of companies have fewer than 50 employees, and most of them are 1 or 2 person operations. And the whole national debate about the economy and about jobs and about work and about legislation focuses solely on those big businesses, because they're the people that have the voice. They're the people that appear on the morning TV and radio shows. We are pro-worker. We believe what we do will create many, many more jobs. Many, many more jobs.
So imagine being England, completely reliant on the United States for security guarantees, and you're over there meddling in elections. What would happen if the American people were just like, screw Britain? They tried to split from you once before. Why are you still hanging around? Oh, you speak English. Barely. Our listener Jen will be like, hey, she got it. We do have listeners in England. Okay, so I posted this as well. Went a little bit viral. 1,000 views. It's pretty good for me. Your government planted a pipe bomb to stop Congress from asking questions about how crap like this translated to 81 million votes. See with your own eyes. Ballots, machines, media interference, intelligence agency interference, and likely entrapment by Capitol Hill.
I think if you made a collage of every single Biden event and put them all together, you would still be safe with your 6-foot spacing.
You wouldn't even hit J6 numbers.
Right.
Now, Benny Johnson, who clearly is a paid mouthpiece for MAGA, right? And by MAGA, I don't say that derogatorily. I'm MAGA. But what I'm saying is we're talking MAGA Inc., right? We're talking the funders, the people behind the money, the people that have the interest in this stuff. And more than anything, they have an interest in changing MAGA. They want MAGA to become neocon. Okay. It's just that simple. Hey, MAGA is defending Israel. Is it? Hey, MAGA is defending whatever. Is it? Okay. So he's asking the Attorney General of Florida about the grand conspiracy case.
A parting question for you about the impaneling of a grand jury. I know that this is obviously something that's happening on a federal level, but for the grand criminal conspiracy, it's happening here in Florida. So I'm sure that you're read into it. And I wanted to get just perhaps your takeaway on how that is moving. It seems to be of great import to the president and to our audience, based on the raid of Mar-a-Lago and the greater overall conspiracy. Can you give us any update on that?
Well, I think, as you know, grand jury proceedings are confidential. So as much as I'd love to be able to talk about it, there's not much to share. I do know we've got a great U.S. attorney down in South Florida that's an enforcer of rule of law. You had a lot of prosecutors under the Biden administration that were living in glass houses. They were engaged in malicious, wrongful practices, and they themselves didn't have themselves buttoned up legally. So I'm glad these investigations are going on. I hope to see them continue in timely fashion, and hopefully we get some news very soon.
I hope so. Subpoenas have been issued. Brennan and Wiseman and company have all been melting down, but we'll see. Just like J6 didn't happen overnight. A lot of people think it, they planned it on January 5th, and here we go, January 7th, I'm indicted. No, that's not how it happened. They funded it in the summer of 2020. This was a long-term plan, one way or another. Like, you can't really deny that. Otherwise, how'd you sneak funding for prisoning rioters into the CARES Act? And it says, very descriptive language. It's shocking. You're like, it sent a chill down my spine. Should have pulled it for this. On a different note, Carlitos, you're going to love this. Carlitos, if you're listening, you're going to love this. Because guess what? Chemtrails, they're real.
You send too much higher. Let's just come back down a little bit and to the specifics. So where these aircraft seem to be everywhere in the United States, where are they taking off from? Where do these chemicals come from? The aluminum particulate, the rest that you did, the magnesium, all the rest you described. What's kind of the chain that gets us to the stripes in the sky that we see?
Aircraft are taking off from countless locations. We're aware of a number of military bases where we know they're deploying from. We also have commercial aircraft with commercial markings that we know are being used in these operations. We know that because we have film footage of these aircraft, retrofit nozzles mounted on the wing pylons. We have up-close photographs aimed into the exhaust jet stream to make this look like, quote, condensation. We are not implicating commercial pilots or personnel, but we are communicating with them. Some commercial pilots that distribute our printed materials in pilot lunchrooms, for example, covertly, because they know their aircraft are being used. These are automated systems. They carry a small payload. You might remember about in the year 2000, the weight of the aircraft became a very big deal, how much luggage you carried on, how much weight you carried on. That appears to be when this was implemented. And we also know that the DoD has...
Okay, so who is this guy? I don't remember his name, but 27 years he's been researching chemtrails. And the reason was he went to Northern California, bought a remote cabin. It was his off-grid place. He's looking up at the sky and he's seeing these lines. So he starts doing different testing. He starts gathering, rainwater, starts testing it for aluminum, going to different places, testing, finds out he's got these concentrations, like highly elevated concentrations of these aluminum nanoparticles.
Well, I happened to watch this podcast as well. Do you remember how he came to the discovery that this was a thing he needed to look into?
It was his cabin.
It was his cabinet, but it was his solar array
was getting 50% of what they were supposed to get.
Exactly.
Yes.
So he was like, how come all the sun isn't hitting my solar panels?
And then he went in and talked about how this large scale operation, it's a DoD operation, can dry out, for example, the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East, drying out Iran. They've got a 1,000-year drought that's been going on, since they decided to fight us over oil. Okay, and the president of Iran has multiple times stated, NATO is keeping the rain from falling. He's crazy. His rights come from God, according to Senator. So apparently this is much more covert. Now the EPA, 2 months ago, right, came out, here's everything to know. And they basically said there's small scale geoengineering drones, blah, 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 which has kind of been the president of or CEO of that little company that's like making rain in Idaho and Utah and stuff. They're doing it with drones. It's a much smaller operation. This is scale. And this has been going on for a long time.
At least a significant number of commercial aircraft with commercial markings. Why would the DoD need or want that? And again, for the base material, because we're talking about an extraordinary amount of material here based on our testing with the University of Minnesota, again, about 500 lab tests there, and extrapolating how much material was in the precipitation, projecting that globally, it appears something in the range of 40 to 60 million tons of nanoparticles are being dispersed annually in skies all over the globe. And the smaller the particle, the more toxic it is, the more harmful it is, the more bioavailable it is. And all the official air quality testing by design doesn't even look for these elements, let alone disclose them. So official air quality testing is PM10, 10 microns, occasionally PM2.5. Those are boulders compared to a nanoparticle. You can fit up to 100,000 nanoparticles across the width of a single human hair. They're inconceivably small. And the reason they use such small particles is because they stay aloft longer. And that's the goal. Keep the particles suspended in the atmosphere. And there's more volumetric forcing. There's more surface area the smaller the particle for a given amount of material. So it appears, and we have a published study on this, there is a peer-reviewed published study that implicates coal fly ash as a base material for these operations because it contains many of the elements the climate engineers feel they need to disperse in our skies, and it provides plausible deniability, and it gets rid of a waste product that they're always trying to get rid of. There's other elements added. American Elements Corporation appears to be one of the primary suppliers for these operations. But again, the fact that this can go on in our skies and the mountain of data that exists on this and the continued pretending by the so-called climate science community that this isn't ongoing is mind-numbing, and they won't be able to hide this for much longer, Tucker. I want to stress that. These programs will be forced to light.
So your government hides pipe bombs. They block out the sun. You know, all the things they've told you that we need to be doing, they're just doing them. We need to go after domestic terrorists. Let's find some. Make some. That's pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
Like the chemtrail thing has been one of those ones where I've really been on the fence for a long time. I do believe there's weather modification, but I've always thought it was at small scale. Ski slopes, you know, farmers, like, you know, real small.
I think it's okay to say this because we are a conspiracy show, right? So what I want to say is maybe what we'll find out, or maybe this will just be the story, that we have to have this aluminum and all these other metallic particles in our air to protect us from the aliens.
Why not? Why not? If they can't keep us divided, if we finally figure out it's us versus them, peasants versus the king, right? Then the king's going to go, hey, let me join your fight against the aliens. It's us versus the aliens. Yes, that's Project Bluebeam, by the way. That's the exact script for Project Bluebeam. Again, just conspiracy theories, the white papers from DOD. Okay. On another one, and this one we don't need to play the whole video, but 60 Minutes did a little research because, of course, everybody hates Trump. And so Harvard researcher Joan Brugge says her work has the potential to prevent breast cancer. She was notified last spring that her federal funding was terminated. It was just a gut punch. My knees buckled and I had to sit down, she says.
Oh, so come on.
Apparently, one of her research science partners, Jason Locasel, apologize for mispronouncing your name. I am actually the lead and corresponding author on the most cited research paper of this person, Harvard researcher's career. Someone told me that today, and I verified it. The claim that her work has had any substantial effect on breast cancer is a dramatic overstatement. Like much of what's being presented in this 60 Minutes segment, it's a PR narrative designed to grab money. It's dishonesty from these institutions about what technology from the life sciences can actually do. And it says more about the way universities grift the public for sympathy and funding than anything about science. It's another one of these examples where it basically comes down to the money. And that's another thing that that gentleman talking about chemtrails said. You know, Tucker Carlson asked who's ultimately responsible. And he goes, well, ultimately the people who print the money. You sound like a peasant.
Well, no doubt she's working on cancer, I'm sure. But, you know, if you were really making progress, I'm sure Donald Trump will figure out how to get you the money.
Exactly.
Jeez.
Exactly. And he's putting a big push to not even pay the insurance companies. Just give it to the people and let them buy it, which would be great. Khalid says yep to the chemtrails. He'll reveal the firmament next. Again, another one of those. We'll see. All right. AP News put out an article. Trump has accused boat crews of being narco terrorists. The truth, AP found, is more nuanced. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So let's go through this, just some of the highlights of this article here. It is more nuanced, right? Anytime you're dealing with a criminal syndicate, you've got different levels of involvement. You have, like, if you're looking at a gang, and I know because I watched this happen in prison, in a prison gang and in a street gang, they're basically the same. The new guy, the initiate, he's not involved in any decision making. And oftentimes they're attracted to the gang because they have no other options. This was clearly explained to me when I was in Philadelphia. There was a guy in there. He was in the Hispanic car, or as they say, the paisas, which means brothers in Spanish. So he was part of the paisas. So he's one of the Hispanic brothers. And because I was one of just a few white guys in that pod, or in that cell block, I should call it. Crazy referencing myself into prison. But in the cell block with him, one day I was sitting down and he and I got talking, and he really wanted to know about my J6 experience. So this guy has been indicted twice before. The first time he got indicted, he didn't like why they indicted him. So he and his brother kidnapped the ATF agent that had indicted him and the ATF agent's brothers, and they tortured him. Well, he went to trial and he got acquitted. And he did it. Okay? So he got acquitted. So then they charged him with something else, and he went to trial and he got acquitted again. This guy's a gangster, tattooed everywhere, but he's wicked smart, right? He does his own legal research. And this is like his 9th prison. He'd figured out where the cameras were at, and he'd bait the guards over to a spot. And he would basically then, like, as soon as he was out of camera spot, he'd fly back and act like he'd just been punched or something. And then he'd create an incident, and then he'd be able to say they did something to him. And then, of course, he'd file a lawsuit against the warden, and then he'd get transferred facilities.
So, like the best NBA flopper on the planet.
This guy's got the game figured out. He's now indicted for a 3rd time on machine gun charges because some store got robbed with a machine gun. And the guys, to cut a deal, blamed him. Again, same prosecutors involved in all 3 of his cases, and now it's the same ATF. So they're just coming for him at this point.
Okay.
So he's getting ready for trial, and he's asking me legal stuff, and we're talking about J6 and everything. And he's telling me about this whole thing. And he's like, well, now you're on this side of the tracks. He says the reason gangs were created was to protect the innocent. That's the point of the gang. You control the neighborhood and protect grandma and auntie and your little brothers and sisters against who? Rival gangs. Why? Because you can't call the cops because dad's a felon and they'll suspect him. Why is dad a felon? Oh, I don't know. Some stupid law that Joe Biden made in 1996. You know what I mean? So the whole thing is like, he's like, you're on this side of the tracks now. If you need help, you got to call a gang member to come do your law enforcement. I was like, oh, I get it. Okay. So in this situation here, you get these young gang members. Why do they become gang members? Because they're sheepdogs. Rather than join the military, they join the gang. They have the same instinct. And then they work up from there, right? You get more involved in your criminal cartel. What's the difference between a narco leader and a general of an army? Only their moral compass, sometimes. Okay? Trump has accused boat crews of being narco-terrorists. The truth, AP found, is more nuanced. Guerrera, Venezuela, one of the fishermen struggling to eke out a living on $100 a month. Another was a career criminal. A third was a former military cadet. And a fourth was down on his luck bus driver. These are the people killed in this one particular boat targeting that Trump called all narco-terrorists. Are they all narco-terrorists? Yes.
Yeah.
But
there are also other things.
Why is the guy who was a former military cadet involved? Because he's a sheepdog. Because he wants to protect his family. He wants to bring some money home. Why the fisherman? He's just a peasant. He just wants to work. I have a boat. I can make more money running your drugs. And by the way, no one's going to stop me in Venezuela. So they're going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So then it goes on to say, the identities of the 4 men and piece together details about the Associated Press of at least 5 others who were slain, providing the first detailed account of those who died in the strikes. In a dozen interviews from the village from which the boats departed, residents and relatives said the dead men had indeed been running drugs, but were not narco-terrorists. I don't know the difference.
Right.
If you're running drugs, you're killing.
What is the difference?
Yeah, what is the difference? If you're running drugs and you're just a fisherman making $100 a month, killed Ron's brother. So I don't know if you're a fisherman or a murderer. That's the problem here.
If you want to be a fisherman, just stop running drugs and just fish.
Just fish. Oh, but I can't because, yes, I know that's the problem. I know when societies fall apart, you're left with very bad options. Why do we have a 50-year mortgage being proposed in 15-year car loans? Because we don't have good options in a fiat money system. It's the same thing here. You don't have good options when the government won't enforce laws and contracts and things like that.
Well, another option here also that maybe we're not touching on is, what if one of these guys is like the enforcer and he's just making this happen, you know?
That's exactly what it is. You got the one guy with the gun telling the other guys to get on board. And by the way, I'll even pay you. I'll make it easy. Oh, okay. Most of the 9 men were crewing such craft for the first or second time, making at least $500 per trip, 5 times their monthly salary. Residents and relatives said they were laborers, a fisherman, a motorcycle taxi driver. 2 were low-level career criminals. 1 was a well-known local crime boss who contracted out his smuggling services to traffickers. Kind of like a political leader might farm out planting a pipe bomb to one of her people. That's the problem with this. Yes. Is the pipe bomber the one who caused all this? No. Is the fisherman the one who caused all this? No. So you want to blame the death of the narco terrorists on Trump? No, blame it on Nicolas Maduro. We don't kill the boats when they don't have drugs on them. And if you hadn't been doing it for decades, we wouldn't be at this point. Anyways, it goes on to basically try to just get you to feel bad for the fishermen and the laborer that were killed.
I do feel bad for him.
I do feel bad for him. I also feel bad for you and your family. I feel bad for Scott Adams losing his son. I feel bad for the people in my life that have been affected by drug addiction. There are no good choices here. I sat in prison with a lot of guys who ran drugs for somebody because they could make a couple extra bucks, and they just didn't think through the consequences of what they were doing. You've now become a part of that. And I can speak with a little bit of authority here. As a peasant, I chose not to join the military for the same reasons, right? My experience has been validated over time. Why were we in Afghanistan? Was it really terrorists or was it poppy fields? Right? What's going on in the Mississippi River Delta with the cops down there? What's going on? Right? When you understand the financial system, just like chemtrails, just like drugs, this is baked in. This is how these other nations get enough cash to buy the goods we sell. The problem is we're not buying any goods. So they're taking our drug money and then they're buying goods from China. This is the same thing that happened in the Opium Wars. China didn't want to buy things from England, but England wanted their tea and their fine china and their silks. So in order to create a money balance, to balance trade, Britain dumped opium off in China at scale. And it was illegal in Britain, prescription only, right? But in China, they're dumping it off wholesale. Why? Because it gets people addicted and they start selling their silver to buy the drugs, which gives England the silver to buy the china and the tea and gives it back to the drug dealers. And, does that make sense? It becomes circular. That's what's going on with South America, except the reason it's increased is because we don't have goods to sell. So now there's a third party, China, providing the goods. You see what I'm saying? It's draining our wealth. They are narco terrorists, economic terrorists, and they're terrorists to your life, period. I don't have any sympathy, especially after being in prison, seeing drug dealers. I remember, about 6 months, I had a lot of sympathy. Oh man, most of the prison just needs rehab. They don't need to be here, blah, 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 blah. And then after a while, I was like, screw that, man. Drug dealers are the bane of existence. These prisons would be dang near empty if it weren't for drugs, because the second, third, fourth, robbery, all that stuff comes from drugs. In fact, I remember talking to your cousin one time, who's a sheriff's deputy, and I just asked him casually at a basketball game, hey, what's the top, crime in this county? Like, what do you guys spend all your time doing? And he thought about it for a while and he said drugs. And then he said, no, actually it's property crimes. And then he thought about it for a minute. And he goes, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, all the property crimes I've ever worked have been drug related. Yeah. You don't steal copper out of an abandoned house. You don't steal people's lawnmowers out of their back shed, right? If you're not
pay your cell phone bill,
pay for drugs. Yeah. You're not paying your mortgage from hawking copper at the pawn shop. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's a pretty big deal. And Trump, again, not only going after drug dealers, but another big part of the drug dealers are the pharmaceutical companies. They're very much in bed with each other. People don't realize that. A lot of the base materials that go into your prescription jobs are the same base materials that go into things like heroin. Poppy has a pharmaceutical reason as well as a street application. Okay. So what's the difference between morphine and heroin?
Well, fentanyl's used in like every operation that ever happens.
Yeah. So Trump is trying to knock out these pharmaceutical companies, knock them down a peg. And how is he doing that? Instead of, like a communist country, paying the pharmaceutical companies to drug you up, he's going to pay you and let you take capital capitalism to the pharmaceutical companies. Buy what you need and want.
Any questions?
Senators that are here, Mr. President, do you personally approve of the deal that's happening right now on Capitol Hill to end the
Well, it depends what deal we're talking about. But if it's the deal I heard about, that's certainly, they want to change the deal a little bit, but I would say so. I think based on everything I'm hearing, they haven't changed anything, and we have support from enough Democrats, and we're going to be opening up our country. It's too bad it was closed, but we'll be opening up our country very quickly.
Mr. President, that deal does reverse the mass firings your administration put through during the shutdown. Did you sign off on that, and will you abide by that if this passes?
Well, I will be. I'll abide by the deal. The deal is very good. We're not going to be giving $1.5 trillion to people that came in from jails and from, the gangs and drug dealers and all of these others that they wanted to be given health care, which would have hurt our health care system. I hope that we're going to be able to have a health care where Lindsay and I were discussing it, Jim and I were discussing it, and Katie, we discussed it. We want a health care system where we pay the money to the people instead of the insurance companies. And I tell you, we're going to be working on that very hard over the next short period of time, where the people get the money. We're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars where the people get the money. Yes, please.
It's a great, give the money to the people and let the people go buy their insurance. Okay. Donald Trump is rewriting our economy by changing where the carrots and sticks are.
Is this like reversing Obamacare?
This is reversing Obamacare.
Oh, thank
Instead
goodness.
of paying insurance companies a subsidy to then offer you cheaper, affordable insurance, which became unaffordable and expensive, plus we pay the tax subsidy. So not only do we pay the higher price, inflation in our micro budget, but we pay a higher price in inflation in the macro budget because we're paying the top. We're doing demand side and supply side. We're trying to increase demand by lowering cost, which always ends to rising costs. And then we're trying to increase supply by subsidizing. You can't stimulate it from both ends. You end up with the university effect, right? When you create student loans and it's no longer associated with outcomes, you have the costs go up. When you subsidize healthcare, make it cheap for the person, so now they use it, make it expensive for the insurance companies. Now they're going to, they can't get more, they just prices go up. Now, a lot of this is because, again, Democrats don't understand macroeconomics, let alone microeconomics. Okay. For example, here's Scott Bessent on with MSNBC, and he's being asked about the credit swap, right, with Argentina. And he makes a very good point to these guys. And this is one of the challenges we as peasants have, because we're only as good as the information we have. We can only watch the news, listen to podcasts, and kind of absorb. I want you to see with your own eyes. Okay. So there's some things that the details matter. You can't just label something. For example, here, MSNBC labels the credit swap we did with Argentina as a bailout.
Amid this discussion of costs and prices and affordability, how does a $20 billion bailout of Argentina help Americans? You're the president's point person on that. Can you explain to those here who are feeling the pinch, including America's farmers, why the United States is helping out Argentina?
Well, do you know what a swap line is?
It's a currency swap, yes.
Yes, but what is that?
You're the Treasury Secretary.
Yes, but why would you call it a bailout?
That is how.
In most bailouts, you don't make money. The U.S. government made money. We used our financial balance sheet to stabilize the government. One of our great allies in Latin America, during an election, the president there won in a landslide. The government's going to make money, and I would rather use peace through economic strength than have to be shooting at narco boats coming offshore if the government collapsed. We have a generational opportunity in Latin America to create allies. We just saw an election in Bolivia. We're probably going to see an election in Colombia. We've seen them in Ecuador. We're going to see them in Chile. So by stabilizing the economy there and making a profit, then that's a very good deal for the American people. And there's a lot we could have been doing for American farmers, but Democrats closed the government.
Amid this discussion of costs.
To prevent Argentina from becoming the next Venezuela by having their economy collapse, within creates a power vacuum, and you get a Maduro or a Chavez. We propped them up by doing a credit swap. But the difference between a bailout and a credit swap is we make the money. We make the arbitrage. We make the spread. That's a big deal. Democrats don't understand the difference between a credit swap and a bailout. So they don't understand an asset that puts money on your balance sheet when the deal's done versus something that's just a deduction. But they want to pitch it to the American people like, oh, this is just another bailout. Is it really? Now, then you've got the tariff issue. And some of our listeners have said things in our chats like tariffs are a tax. Well, then I would say that a real estate commission's a tax, distribution fees are a tax, all value added beyond the thing itself is a tax because it all gets passed on to the consumer. If that's the way we think about it, everything is a tax. Okay. So here's Donald Trump talking about tariffs in the Supreme Court. They don't understand what tariffs are. If tariffs are a tax, then yeah, Congress has to raise it. But tariffs aren't in the category of tax. They're not a tax on the people. When you talk about the price, that's not. If you're associating my purchase price as the tax, I have my sales tax amount and all the value add. What are we doing with gas? What are we doing with so many things, right? I don't see the legislature voting on what realtors can charge. That's a tax. Okay. So here we go. Trump's talking about tariffs. This has raised a ton of money. If the Supreme Court gets rid of tariffs, it'll be devastating.
People saying they're anxious about the economy. Why are they saying that?
I don't know that they are saying. I think polls are fake. We have the greatest economy we've ever had. We will have over $20 trillion come into our economy, and it's largely because of my election, but it's also largely because of tariffs. Even the tariff thing, it's such a disgrace. I'm watching them saying, well, no money would have to be paid back because it's not that much. It's trillions and trillions of dollars would have to be paid back.
If the Supreme Court rules against the tariffs.
It would be a disaster for our country. Now, will I do something? I'll figure something out because I do. That's what I do in life. I figure things out. But it's so... President Xi was willing to do the rare earth thing. That's magnets. Now, nobody knows what a magnet is. If you don't have a magnet, you don't make a car. You don't make a computer. You don't make televisions and radios and all the other things. You don't make anything. It's a 30-year effort to monopolize a very important thing. Now, within 2 years, we'll have magnets, all the magnets we want, but we don't. Because of tariffs, I called. I said, listen, here's the story. You're going to play the magnet. I'm going to play the tariff on you. And for national security purposes, I raised the tariff by 100% over and above what they were paying, which was 55. So he was at 155%. Within 10 minutes, I got a call. We'd like to meet. And we settled it out, and we made a wonderful deal, great deal.
So the tariffs were used as a tool that didn't actually get implemented, but it brought them to the table. Okay, so they're again proving it's not really a tax, in my opinion, because it's a cost to China. Why would China care?
Well, I wonder if China would care if Congress just started talking about tariffs.
See with your eyes. See with your eyes. Yeah. When gas prices got stupid, construction companies around here had to put a fuel surcharge on their invoices. So you figured gas was like $3 a gallon for diesel, and you could add a fuel charge if it got a lot more. So when gas was $4.20 and we had given a bid at $3 a gallon, we would add, $150 for a fuel surcharge because we have to pass it on. So I didn't care what the price of diesel was because I was passing it on. Right? I didn't go and negotiate for the price of diesel. I didn't care. It was a pass on. Since everybody passed it on, it was fair. Okay. Now, here's the same situation. If it's truly a tax on the people and the people pay it, then why does China care? They care because they pay. It's a tax on them. So the Supreme Court should say all taxation around the world is illegal and tell China to stop taxing things. Stupid. Now, why do we have high interest rates? This affects, again, we have to pay. The real tax is on the money, okay? And the interest rate that the Federal Reserve sets is the interest rate that the government has to pay on the spending it does. If they don't bring the money in, because what is it, half of our budget goes to pay the interest on the money. If you lower the interest rate, not only will your housing mortgage go down and your credit cards and your car loans, but more importantly, the payment to the national debt.
The debt service.
Housing costs are still out of reach. And another thing that your administration is trying to tackle, many Americans, the average age of first-time home buyers are now up to age 40, which is sad. The country you and I grew up in.
I inherited that. Look, you have to understand.
Right, but let me get to the question, though, because your housing director has proposed something that has enraged your MAGA friends, which is this 50-year mortgage idea. So,
which, by the way, is silly stupid. If you're enraged about the 50-year mortgage, you're going to say words like the price and you're going to pay too much, the cost. None of that matters. Don't go get a 50-year mortgage then. What that matters for is the first-time buyer that's completely iced out of the market. If you can drop their monthly payment a couple $100, they don't care what the end price is. They're making a choice between rent, which is ever climbing, or a mortgage where at least you can have the upside, even if it's that far away. And the reality is, what did we look at silver at the beginning? In my adult lifetime, 20 years, 10 times.
Do you know anything about car sales?
A little bit.
What's the first thing that the car salesman wants to know when you come on the lot?
How much you can afford.
How much can you pay per month?
Exactly.
They don't care what you're buying.
Boomers are concerned about their equity, the price. Okay, they had good jobs. They made normal payments. The millennials on down, never going to do it. They need to get in, hustle, make a windfall, or wait for the currency to devalue, right? When milk is $22 a gallon, a $500,000 mortgage isn't that big.
Right.
Think about this right now. It's easy to make $1 million today. I've made millions, okay? It was a lot harder 25, 22 years ago when I graduated from high school.
Oh, yeah.
Back
It
when
seemed
silver
impossible.
was $4.50 an ounce. The equivalent of making $1 million for me outside of high school is the equivalent today of making 10. Only 20 years. So that $1 million mortgage that I got 20 years ago, I could pay off a lot easier now. Way easier. In fact, it's like 10 cents on the dollar easier. So yes, please, longer mortgages, lower payments. I would like the upside of the arbitrage on inflation. Boomers don't think this way because your dollar was worth something for a long time. That is not the case for millennials on down. You're living in two different worlds. Boomers, we don't have enough equity. They go populist to protect their equity. They vote MAGA. The younger crowd can't even buy because the boomers want to protect their wealth. You realize you're in like top 1 or 2% wealthy when you make like 60 or 80 grand a year and own a piece of property.
That's 35,000.
35,000 a year. You're in. Well, that's, I think, worldwide. I think in the United States, jump to like 60. But the point is, if everybody making less than $60,000 a year, a bunch of $60,000 a year, they're still climbing the ladder. They want capitalism. They want what their parents had. The rest of them have just forgone that. And it's the choice between DSA or the system as is, which is
right. And I was actually having this very conversation with my wife the other day when we were talking about the results of the elections. And it was like, the kids these days, they don't see the world that we do because they're being impacted differently than we have been impacted in our lives.
Here's the other divide too. The younger crowd that's MAGA, they're almost exclusively Christian nationalists. Almost exclusively, to the detriment of their economics, right? Their faith overrides their economics. Big crowd, lots of people finding Jesus because nihilism is kind of hopeless, right? But the boomers that are MAGA, the young MAGA crowd doesn't approve of this gay homosexual Scott Besson or the gay homosexual Rick Grinnell, or you know what I mean? Like they don't approve of that. They have a different moral system. These guys are economic MAGA. These guys are religious MAGA. That's also a big divide too that you've got to realize. These guys are not going to back you up if you don't have the moral character, because that's all they're standing on. They're not standing on an economic, look, we can protect our equity and we can protect, they have no equity. They want you to protect their culture and their religion. You see what I'm saying? So anyways, it's an interesting split. So let's continue on here with President Trump and Laura Ingraham.
A significant MAGA backlash, calling it a giveaway to the banks and simply prolonging the time it would take for Americans to own a home outright.
Boomers.
Is that really a good idea?
It's not even a big deal. I mean, you go from 40 to 50 years, and whatever did you pay?
People were criticizing him going from 40 to 50. You have to realize in the commercial world, 40-year loans are normal.
Pay something less from 30. That some people had a 40, and then now they have a 50. All it means is you pay less per month. You pay it over a longer period of time. It's not like a big factor. It might help a little bit. But the problem was that Biden did this. He increased the interest rates. And I have a lousy Fed person who's going to be gone in a few months, fortunately. I have a guy too late. Jerome Powell, we call him too late. He was too late in everything, except when it came to before the, the so-called Democrat election, which didn't work. but we're going to get interest rates down. But even with interest rates up, the economy is the strongest it's ever been. You asked me, just to go back to the beginning of your question, you talked about prices. We're down on energy. We're down on interest rate. Interest rates are down despite the Fed. Now, if we had a normal person at the Fed, would have really low interest rates, and we will soon have that.
Housing costs are still out of reach.
Donald Trump is like, you got narco terrorists coming in. You've got Obamacare price inflation. You've got election rigging, which now Jasmine Crockett's all over. She wants to make sure we get rid of those Dominion machines. What else? What else have we mentioned here? Right? You got all these factors. And here's what Scott Adams made a point of. He goes, have you ever noticed how Trump and Republicans in general are always left with the blame for the actual bills the Democrats pass?
The other thing that's funny, going back to my theme, is that Democrats will have no idea what's happening today because they don't have a worldview that incorporates what they're witnessing. They just don't have any worldview that explains this. Like, why did all my heroes say there's no way we're going to cave, and then they caved? Was it ever important? Don't you think it leaves the Democrats with some big questions about their own side? Yeah, some big questions. So the Democrats are going to look at their side as a bunch of wimpy losers. There's going to be more pressure on Schumer to get the heck out of that job because he's an embarrassment. Bernie Sanders pointed out that the Republicans ruined healthcare. He ruined healthcare. Correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things I'm watching is that every time the Democrats ruin something, don't they blame Republicans? Every time the Democrats ruin something? Because who ruined climate change? That wasn't Republicans. How about the border? Not Republicans. How about inflation? It wasn't Republicans. So there seems to be a clear pattern here, which is the Democrats do these things which have gigantic downsides, and then they sell as hard as they can that the problem was from the Republicans.
Pretty much.
That's their whole game, is doing dumb shit and trying to blame it on the other side. That's it. That's all they have.
Couldn't have said it better.
And, they use it a lot.
They use it a lot. That's great. All the problems we have are your initiatives. Fiat money system. Thank you, Franklin Roosevelt. Thank you so much. Oh, and Woodrow Wilson. Good. Hat tip to you. Okay. Fiat money system and central banking. Right. Military industrial complex. Gotta love Johnson in the Vietnam War. You know what I mean? Gotta love that. And Franklin Roosevelt and all of his industrialist buddies. Now, granted, we had to fight World War II. Whatever. Okay. Obamacare. You go on and on. Yes. Very much Republican problems. You want to see some Republican problems that we're going to have to fix in future generations? Let's listen to what James Carville is absolutely certain of they're going to do. Again, dumping these problems off on our laps and our children's.
I want to talk to Chief Justice Roberts, Justice Alito, Justice Barrett, Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Gorsuch. I might be forgetting one. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. A Democrat is going to be elected in 2028. You know that. I know that. It's going to be a Democratic House. It's going to be a Democratic Senate. The Democratic president is going to announce a special transition advisory committee on the reform of the Supreme Court, that we could have our third branch of government has lost the faith and trust of the American people. And his president are going to do everything along. He's going to appoint a blue ribbon, maybe Judge Ludick and the dean of the, just the usual fucking suspects, all right? And they're going to recommend that the number of Supreme Court justices go.
So they already know what they're going to recommend. You just got to get the blue ribbon committee. Some people with a good name, some Harvard guys and stuff in there. See with your eyes. See what you're seeing here.
9 to 13. That's going to happen, people. That's going to happen to you. They're going to win. They're going to do some blue ribbon panel of distinguished jurists, and they are going to recommend 13 and a Democratic Senate and House. They're going to pass it, and the Democratic president is going to sign it because they have to do an intervention So we can have a Supreme Court that the American people trust again. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And I would bet a lot of money that that's what's going to happen.
Okay, so those are the problems that Republicans are going to have in the future. It'll be blamed on them. If you didn't elect Trump, we wouldn't have had to pass the Supreme Court.
We're going to have a Supreme Court intervention.
Yeah.
Okay.
So who's talking bigger crap to the Supreme Court, the Democrats or the Republicans? Trump's just like, it'll be bad for America. And they're like, it'll be bad for the Supreme Court. We'll make it personally miserable. Okay. Donald Trump, I guess it's not a thing I was going to play. All right. Elon Musk explains it pretty simply. Talks about money, taxes. This is the truth.
You get taxed on what you own, you get taxed on what you buy, and you get taxed on what you own. And it's like, okay, this is taxes. And, and then what does it get spent on? A bunch of the stuff you get spent on you don't even agree with. So, that's why we need to reduce the size of government. And just spend less money and, let the people keep a lot more of their hard-earned money. So
complicated.
You get taxed on what you own. You get taxed.
It's not complicated. Don't pay the insurance companies, pay the people. Let them decide where they want to spend it.
Yeah.
Hey, don't pay for war. Raise war bonds. Let the people decide if they want to pay for it. One of the other things that Elon Musk talked about was battery generation. This is pretty interesting. Ron, you'll probably dig this.
Okay.
Spend a lot of time trying to create electricity, but not a lot of time trying to store it, which means we actually produce 50% more electricity than we actually need.
If you look at total U.S. power generation capability, it's roughly a terawatt. But the average power usage is less than half a terawatt. And that's because there are big differences in power usage between day and night. So the daily and seasonal variations in power consumption mean that the United States, and really every country, is only producing about half as much electrical energy as it could. Because without batteries, there's no effective way to buffer the energy. So what batteries actually enable is, even if you don't build any incremental power plants, you could double the energy output of the United States just with batteries. This is a super big deal. And in fact, I think that's really where most of the incremental energy production in the United States is going to come from. It's literally batteries. So a bigger deal than it may seem. If you look
and Doug Burgum announced that we are going to be producing a massive amount more of electricity. So here is Doug Burgum talking about this. It's actually pretty incredible. And if we can bring batteries online, that'd be great. Energy ends poverty. Now, what I mean by that, it doesn't get rid of the poor. As Jesus says, the poor you have with you always. Wealth is on a scale. There's always a bell curve. And even if you fatten out the bell curve, there's going to be the ends of it. So just need to accept that. There's always going to be the elite wealthy. And on the other side of that coin is your dirt poor homeless guy, right? They're always going to look different. It's oddly enough, though, the most wealthy people in America today are the most in debt, and the homeless guy has no debt. So you'd think it'd be the reverse, but apparently wealth is measured in debt in America. So anyways, Doug Burgum says we're increasing energy. More energy means more commodities produced. It means more houses built. It means more goods delivered. And it means even a homeless guy gets
more energy created the industrial, or allowed the industrial age to occur.
I want you to understand this. Even a homeless person has a cell phone. So what that means is in their pocket, they have all the tools they need to make all the wealth they want to make, because they have the whole world right there in their pocket. Even your most poor person in America typically will have a cell phone, which again, why is that possible? Cheap electricity, cheap energy.
Now, I don't know about the technology around these batteries that Elon's talking about, but this is not a new thing. And everybody knows this. I mean, what he was talking about, electricity gets used more in the day than at night. And, hello, everybody understands that.
You think,
and the thing is that base energy, the energy that is being created as a base to supply our needs, our base needs, is so expensive to create. And then what absorbs most of the coal production that we produce in every year. And the energy on top of that is usually produced by gas or natural gas to fill in the gaps where the base energy isn't enough. because you can turn those power plants on and off. The coal plants, you can't really turn them on and off. Those are on all the time. And so that's your base energy. And then energy that you need on top of that is, absorbed by gas, stuff that you can turn on and off. The problem with energy has always been that you have to continuously create it, and it's not able to be stored. I mean, can you imagine the battery that you would need to store the amount of energy that your house uses every day? I mean, like you can store the energy that you use in your watch or your cell phone in your pocket, but you can't store the batteries that you would need for your house would be immense and incredible. And then if you take that to scale, the batteries that you would need to power our base energy in America would be unbuildable.
Well, and you consider things like Chernobyl. You know why Chernobyl melted down? They had a design flaw that caused, some rod blocker pin thing to not move. And so it created a fluctuation in the power. And then diesel generators kick on to move the rod to cool the thing. You know what I mean? So and there was a delay. There was a gap. It was seconds, half a second of delay from when the generators kicked on, caused Chernobyl meltdown. Right? It was a design flaw. So the solution to that was you have to have batteries that they added the battery in to instantly give the power to, tamp down the fluctuation or whatever. And then the generators kick on. Right. They had to create that. So batteries, you think about it with AI, if you have in the battery, in the power supply, you lose your code.
And there are different kinds of batteries, different kinds of technologies that can store energy. And some of these are like capacitors or like your car battery. Well, a car battery is generally relatively safe. Capacitors are very freaking dangerous. And these are the kind of batteries that I'm thinking that would be possible to be able to store this kind of energy that Elon's talking about. And they are extremely dangerous.
If we sat down with Carlitos, we could probably discuss how the pyramids themselves were some. All right, let's hear Doug Burgum. What's going to happen to energy prices?
We're going to continue to see a downward pressure on energy prices because of abundance, because of the increase in supply that's coming out, because President Trump accelerating permitting, cutting red tape, all the things that we're doing as a whole of government as part of President Trump's agenda of energy dominance, that dominance to be able to, again, have the ability to drive prices down. When you lower the price of energy, then you lower the price of everything, because there's an energy component in the food you eat, the car you drive, and the clothes on your back.
We're going to taxes. It's all taxes, Ron. It goes to we have to pay it. Therefore, it's a tax. Ron Paul, no more energy regulation. It's a tax. Yeah, isn't that great? Yeah. They'll even tell you can't lower energy costs because then the people won't be taxed enough, and we set the taxation. That's what Ron Paul would argue. Now, part of the reason why we need more energy is because the entire system is changing. The financial system right now runs on paper. Paper takes diesel to go from place to place and gasoline, but it's paper, right? It uses fossil fuels as its means. Now, everything uses fossil fuels, but what's really happening now is we're going to have an increased demand because everything in our financial system is going digital.
Many Americans are unaware that behind the scenes, the technical backbone of the financial system is decades out of date, many, many years out of date. You know that. Paul and others are straightening it out, but payments and money transfers are costly and take days or even weeks to clear. Under this bill, the entire ancient system will be eligible for a 21st century upgrade using the state-of-the-art crypto technology. Who would have thought we would have been saying that 2 years after many Americans?
Yeah, 2 years after the administration was saying, we're banning it. Why? Because we rely on the outdated paper system and all the loopholes to print free money. You know, the free money printers. The digital system will not allow that because it's going to be more transparent. It's going to be auditable, which is why this is the strike CEO is like, hello, people, wake up.
Listen, it is what it is. And this is so bullish for Bitcoin. They're going to have to print so much money. They're going to have to. Bitcoin is really priced with how much fiat currency is sloshing around in the world. And in order for all of this to play out and work, we have to debase our currency, we have to devalue our debt, and we have to create more fiat. It's going to send Bitcoin nuclear.
It's going to send Bitcoin nuclear. Now, earlier I started out the show talking about the price of Bitcoin. And for those of us that joined us late, let's go ahead and take a look at that, because you don't need to. Okay, here we go. Bitcoin, right?
Sorry.
This is where Bitcoin's at. And again, he says it's based on the price of money, on the price of,
What happened?
Let's see. Silver spot. Okay, silver spot. This is my favorite place to go to check silver pricing. Where to go? APMX. Okay, so okay, what's silver done over, let's go all here. Okay. It's almost like, hey, as they print more money, okay, let's look at gold, right? Where's gold at? Oh, look, as they print more money, it's going to cost the value of these things. Let's overlay here, right? There's your dollar. A dollar is a dollar.
Yep.
But we know they're printing it. Okay. Look at where we're at. Now, there's Bitcoin. Now, look at the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones.
Smokes.
Throw the Dow Jones in there. Look at the Dow Jones. Oh, hey, people should invest in real estate. Why? Or stocks. Why? Look at the Dow Jones. It just goes right with the money. But Bitcoin, gold, dollar, through the roof, baby. Through the roof. Again, there's no solution to printing the money. There's no solution. Inflation's built in the cake. 50-year mortgages, that's so you boomers can keep your equity, because your values need to go up, because that's what you've been raised to expect.
Right. You'll end up paying more interest.
You're not ready for your house to drop value 200%.
No.
Because that's what it would take to make homes affordable in our current system. Yeah. It's not happening. Inflation's baked into the cake. Get out of the dollar. Get out of the dollar. You want to be the 1% wealthy when this is over, or do you want to be in line with the DSA guys waiting for bread? The redistribution plan, right? When they start redistributing these dollars that are mopping around everywhere. And keep in mind, Trump's making a difference, right? There's
a loan on a car.
He's trying to change all the different things. Inflation's baked in. So now we just need to make the dollar the best of all the losers that are out there, right? We need other countries that want our dollar to buy our goods. We have to have something to sell them other than drugs.
Don't forget, when we passed the great big beautiful bill, which gives you tremendous middle income tax benefits, and it gives so much to everybody. Think of it. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, and no tax, very importantly, on overtime. If you work overtime, you don't have to pay tax. So many other things. It gives you a deduction if you buy a car, you borrow money, you put a loan on a car, you're allowed to deduct the interest. That's never happened in our country before. That's always been for the richer people. They're allowed to take deductions. Now you can deduct interest on a car. So we have tremendous goodies in there. They like to try and disparage it. Oh, it's the greatest bill ever passed in the history of our country. That's why we did it all in one. It's 4 years worth of goodies, and it's largely for jobs and for the middle class and for security. So don't forget, when we passed the great big beautiful bill,
just a continuation of the tax cuts. And there were a lot of W-2 workers that weren't actually very happy with the tax cuts. They lost a lot of their write-offs and their deductions, but they put them back in. And as Scott Bessent said, and I played this in a 1776 live class last night, Scott Bessent said, nobody adjusted their taxes this year, and these cuts are retroactive. So there's going to be a massive amount of money showing up for people as returns in the spring. All your overtime taxes paid, refunded. All your tax on tips paid, refunded. Oh, you got Social Security and you're above the margin for taxes, refunds, all coming back. Now, again, part of this whole agenda, changing the way the financial system works and moving on to crypto, is going to change everything. This is Scott Bessent talking about this yesterday.
We will take a close look at regulatory impediments to blockchain, stable coins, and new payment systems. And we will consider reforms to unleash the awesome power of the American capital market. Americans deserve a financial services industry that works for all Americans, including and especially Main Street.
With the advent of crypto technology, it's different than any of the last 5,000 or 2,000, 3,000 years of money supply. Gold, silver, salt, other hard commodities were used as money, right? We went from seashells to shiny rocks, and now we're at colored money. But now we have this digital thing. It's a new frontier. So we don't know. They're going to eliminate all the delays with the paper system, make things instantaneous through the digital system. But part of that is also going to increase the amount of tracking they can do. So it would be very easy to say, yeah, no more taxes. We'll just take it off the top. And by the way, you don't even need to file. You know why? Because we can calculate it for you, because we can see every transaction. We already know what you bought at the grocery store to reduce it from your tax liability, or we know what you paid that car interest because it's tied into the system.
We already took it out of your account.
Already took it out. You just go to work. We'll do the accounting for you. Okay. So what this ends up doing is it's going to create a world basically like this. This is Catherine Austin Fitts. We've played this clip before. It's a little revamped for this playing, but she talks about how Trump is bringing in the control grid. I just showed you how he's doing it.
Trump was put in by the bankers to get the control grid. The other team in the uniparty wasn't moving fast enough.
Why the control grid? Here's why. Why were the bankers? Because the interest is due. The balance, the books have to balance. This is the end of the empire. You don't have anything left to sell. You're basically draining away through drug money, and in order to pay the other countries to buy the few goods you have left. And now that money's all going to China, right? Or other places. So we need a control grid. The risk managers, your big bankers, they're looking at this going, hey, we've got to get these debts paid because we're moving our reserves. We're moving where we're doing most of our business. So we played the Larry Fink and Jamie Dimon talking about China and Asia on the ascent, right? They're not investing in the America. They want to drain things out. And how do they do that? Well, they got to get the interest. They got to get those loans paid. When you have a paper bill, you can just choose not to pay it. You go to court, it's a big process for them to come collect the collateral. You go to digital, you miss a couple payments, they'll come take the vehicle. They don't have to go through the whole court system thing, right? So that's the control grid.
They couldn't get the control grid.
I knew it.
I sent you a link. We just did a new collection of all the things Trump is doing to move the control grid. He is moving very, very fast. When it comes to building, first he's getting the Real ID implemented very aggressively. Real ID, to do a control grid, you need a very high quality precision national ID that's interoperable with all the other IDs around the world. And he's got Kristi Noem out there pushing the Real ID like there's no tomorrow. So they're working, and it's done through the states, but the feds are pushing it. So the first thing you need is a digital ID. The second thing you need is an all digital financial system. So you got to kill cash, and you got to make everybody interact digitally. And if you look at what he's doing with taxes and Social Security, he's trying to make everybody, he's canceled pennies, but he's also canceled now. Normally I pay my taxes with paper, and now he's saying, no, you got to do everything digital. You
hear that?
Yeah. Does that mean that Trump is working for the deep state?
No, he's working for you and I.
Okay.
But the deep state a long time ago, starting in 1913, set in a plan of unextinguishable debts. Welcome to unextinguishable. This was the plan.
But what's up with the Real ID thing? Because it seems to me like
that's what.
But that just seems like a deep state thing, and he's pushing it.
He has to.
Okay.
Otherwise, boomers lose their equity and they go hungry and they die in poverty. These aren't good choices. I don't blame Trump and say, oh, he's an antichrist. No. This will be, in my opinion, a Genesis 50 moment. That which you intended for evil will be used for good. Why? Because now we can see your transactions too, Mr. Government. We can see what Bitcoin you have in your reserves. We can't audit the gold in Fort Knox. So what they think to do to control us, we the people, if we play our cards right, can use to control them.
It's not this year, but next year.
Really?
So he's trying to, if you go through that list, I've got 50 different items of what he's doing. And if you look at what they're doing with the Genius Act and stablecoin, he said no CBDCs, but stablecoin. So I don't know if you've read the Genius Act, which is the new plan for stablecoins. Okay. A CBDC would be issued by the Federal Reserve. So presumably the New York Fed and the Fed member banks. Okay. Now they are owned by their members. So Citibank, JP Morgan Chase, they own, as members, they own the New York Fed and, basically govern it. Okay. And the New York Fed is the depository for the Treasury, and the different banks work as agent to do those transactions. Okay. So now under the Genius Act, what they're saying is the guys who own the New York Fed are all going to create subsidiaries and issue stablecoin, which will be interoperable and can work with a social credit system. Now, here's the beauty of it. The New York Fed, under the law, has direct obligations to Congress, and Congress has jurisdiction over them. If you do it through the owners of the Fed, through their private subsidiaries, you're going to have some degree of freedom. So it gives you more freedom.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So if you think this is improvement, you have another thing coming.
Let me tell you what this means. the marijuana industry in Colorado was the first state to legalize it. So you got all these dispensaries, and it's illegal at the federal level. So because it's illegal at the federal level, banks will not touch money that's touched marijuana, right? So these dispensaries have vaults of cash in the back, like literally, like gun safes full of cash, millions of dollars in cash. And a whole bunch of dispensaries get set up this way. And one day they show up to work and there are armored vehicles there. And they're there to take the dollars. These are our dollars and it's legal state. And where's the sheriff to protect us? And they go, oh, no, don't worry. We're from the Federal Reserve. We're not actually under the government, so we can come take our property back. We don't have to go through courts or nothing, but we're going to take our property. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to issue a Fed coin. So the Federal Reserve got in the business of laundering marijuana drug money through the dispensaries and bypassed the Treasury and bypassed the laws and gave the dispensaries stable coins. Fed Reserve stable coins representing the amount of dollars that they've been confiscated. Because it says Federal Reserve note at the top, so they came and got their money, and they're a private business. Okay. Now, the cartels got wind of that, and they were like, oh, that's great. So you mean we don't have to go buy things with dollars to try to launder the money? We don't have to pay taxes and reinvest it into real estate and resorts and all the things. Go watch Ozark and see how they do it. All of a sudden now, just run it through a state legal marijuana dispensary. The Fed shows up and they launder it for you. Yeah. Convenient. Now, all of that leads to a situation where Elon Musk is describing when everything's digital, when they can cut you off from your expenses, right? If you commit some kind of financial crime, well, now you can't accept payments from people because you're a scam artist or something like that, right? It could get even worse. Elon Musk sees a world where we get rid of prisons completely. Sounds great, right?
I think we may be able to give people, if somebody's committed crime, a more humane form of containment of future crime, which is if you say you now get a free Optimus, and it's just going to follow you around and stop you from doing crime. But other than that, you get to do anything. It's just going to stop you from committing crime. That's really it. You don't have to put people in prisons and stuff. It's pretty wild to think of the various of all the possibilities, but I think it's clearly the future.
So would I have had one of these robots following him around, telling me not to read those political books from Henry David Thoreau, or would have I had Optimus following me around?
I was actually thinking the other day that it wasn't going to be Optimus. It was going to be more like RoboCop.
More like RoboCop. No, it's wild. All right, guys, we've gone way over our time. It's time for us to jump over to private and do a few minutes there. We had a great viewership today. We're rolling with a bunch of you on Rumble. Thank you for joining us. We have a decent crowd over on X. You guys don't get to participate in the live chat. Please consider joining us on Rumble in the future. You can follow links on my X page to find the show. And of course, you lone holdout there on YouTube. So glad to have you. All right, guys, we'll see you later. We are jumping into private.
Boom.
Maybe. Are we there yet?
Maybe.
We're getting there. We're almost
probably
there.
are. Dang it.
Are we? No. We're working on it. We're going private. In
We
private,
probably
we're going
are
to be
private.
talking a little bit about Epstein.